Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing the Fire and Ice build that I've been using in Battleground Convoy. Let's go. As always, if you see yourself in this video, please drop me a comment and say hi. Now, as I've already covered in my Battleground Convoy videos that barely anyone has been seeing, I've actually really been enjoying this mode. It's very much a challenge, it's very chaotic, there's a lot happening, there's so much that can happen in a few seconds, especially with the portals that you can use to teleport across the map. But I actually really enjoy the chaos that happens in this mode, and I've been having a fairly decent success rate with regards to my personal successes and kills and assists from the build that I've been using. So there's two stances you can take in this mode. You can either attack and basically be focusing on killing players on the enemy idol, or you can be pushing your idol and be defending your idol. So you kind of choose which you want to do. Sometimes you end up with a good team that says where people should be, or suggests that, oh yeah, my half of the team do this, the other half of the team do that. So that's quite handy if you do enter this mode with people that know what they're doing. I think a lot of people are still learning, and obviously not everyone has had a chance to play this mode yet, as it is only a specific period in the evening that it's available, and with real life and other things that people have, it's not always possible to play at that time, which is why I've not actually managed to play it that much myself. But as I said, the build that I've been using for this has been working pretty well. So I'm going to be going through this in a lot of detail today. So I'm going to be going through the set items, the essences on my legendary items, Paragon, Warband Buff, and the legendary gems that I'm using, and legendary gems that you could use in place of the ones that I've got in case you are free to play or lower resonance. I'm going to suggest gems for everyone basically. So we're going to be looking at all of it today, and also seeing this gameplay to see exactly how this build's working and how I've been using it to my advantage in this mode as well. Now, if you're new to this PvP mode and you've not yet played it, I definitely recommend going in with a friend. So for Battleground Convoy, you can take one player with you. So I'd suggest asking someone in your clan or warband that's already played it. Someone that's similar resonance to you definitely helps. If you go with someone that's much higher resonance, you can end up with a insanely unbalanced match, and you might struggle, especially if you're free to play yourself and going in with like a 10k player or something like that. Now, there is already a lack of balance in this, which a lot of people have mentioned, and I do believe that that is due to being able to go in with a friend, because obviously you will get whales that go in together. I've seen it a couple of times where you've got like two 10k players on the same team, and then the highest resonance player on your team might be like 8,000 resonance, because the overall resonance is somewhat balanced. But yeah, it's where people are teaming up for that. But I would recommend doing that for your first few matches, just so that you have some kind of support, and if you also put yourselves on the same path of your team in the match, it makes it much easier to track where both of you are, and much easier to actually see what the other person is doing, but also having an idea of what build you're both going in with, so you can support each other, because that is what I've done in all of my matches when I've played with another friend. So I've played with my friend GameZone, and I've done a couple matches with my friend Goku as well, just to test things out. And it definitely helps, as I said, knowing that your friend is there to back you up when you need it, and being able to support each other with the right builds. So we're 3 minutes into the match, and we have our first death here. We've got a nice amount of assists so far for the battle, which I'm pretty happy with. Sacred Guardian has just appeared, so the team that defeats this first will gain a buff. So hopefully some of my teammates will head there to that Guardian. I'm just focusing on the enemy team's Guardian that they're pushing, as it is getting very, very close to this checkpoint here. So we need to continue to actually destroy those players and take them down before our Crystal Heart gets destroyed for the match. So I'm just going to leave you to watch the rest of this battle, and then once this is over, we're going to discuss the results of the match, and we'll also then look into the build with all the details as I mentioned. So unfortunately, this battle was yet another loss in this mode, which, as I said, I've mainly been getting the losing team each time I've played. I think I've had 2 wins so far, but my personal performance hasn't been too bad. So as you can see here, myself and Game Zone both tied for assists. We both had 21 assists. And I had 6 kills and just 2 deaths. Game Zone had 8 kills and 1 death. So we were actually holding the top 2 positions, which is amazing, especially as we weren't the highest resonance players on our team for this battle. So I was actually really happy with that result. And you can see, as I said, the build definitely does work. So let's take a look into everything that we're using for this now. And we're going to look at all the details, as I said, including the legendary gems and alternative gems that you could use. Unfortunately, I am still silver 2, but that's been in the same place for the last 2 weeks now. Firstly, taking a look at set items, we're using 4 pieces of Angmit's conflagration. The duration of your additional ignite status is increased by 30%. There is a 15% chance of attaching an ignite status to an enemy when dealing damage with primary attacks or skills, dealing 27,993 damage over 3 seconds up to a maximum of 3. Alongside this, we're using 2 pieces of End Winter. Your damage is increased by 15% when attacking chilled enemies and by 30% when attacking frozen enemies. Bosses immune to chill and freeze effects will become marked, triggering these bonuses. And then alongside this, we are using 2 pieces of Grace of the Flagellant. All continual damage, channel damage and persistent ground damage is increased by 15%. Moving on to legendary items, we're using Vacia's Resourceful Countenance on the Helm. Scorch now launches an electric orb that explodes on impact, creating an electric field that pursues enemies and inflicts them with shock. Scorch damage is increased 18%, Scorch cooldown decreased 10% from the awakened slot. Lysana's Sorrow on the chest. Frostfield now grants you Creeping Chill, causing your attacks to chill enemies and freeze them on critical hits. Frostfield cooldown reduced 7.2%, cooldown reduced 10% from the awakened slot. Searing Judgment on the shoulder. Disintegrate now channels fire, burning enemies for additional damage over time. Disintegrate damage is increased 18% and disintegrate energy is consumed 10% slower. Chaos Nexus on the pants. So disintegrate channels up to 3 additional beams at nearby enemies, each continually dealing 4,178 damage. Damage is increased 90%, disintegrate damage increased by 10% from the awakened slot. Scour Cut on the main hand. Disintegrate range is increased by 29%, disintegrate energy consumed 10% slower. Ascalor's Fire on the first offhand. Scorch damage increased 19% and cooldown decreased 10% from the awakened slot. Entropic Edge on the alternate main hand. So with this one, disintegrate damage is increased 19% and disintegrate energy is consumed 10% slower. And then lastly, we've got Withering Chill on the alternate offhand. Scorch critical hit chance is increased 29% against chilled enemies and 50% against frozen enemies. Scorch damage is increased by 10%. So taking a look now at Paragon, I'm using the Gladiator tree here and the nodes that we've got active. Starting off, we've got Trapper. Whenever you drop below 30% life, you will lay a trap beneath your feet every 5 yards you travel over the next 6 seconds. Cannot occur more often than once every 240 seconds. So the cooldown on that is quite slow, but obviously it's a decent one to have. Got Cheat Death, which is a must-have for me. Fatal attacks from players instead reduce you to 1 life while making you immune to damage and stunning you for 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, you recover 60% life. Cannot occur more often than once every 210 seconds. So sometimes this only gets the chance to activate once, but that once can completely change the game for you. It might mean that you end up with a crazy kill streak, or it might, just prolong you, not prolong your suffering, but prolong you being able to support your team in the battle. Next up, we've got Hold Formation. Each party member within 15 yards reduces the damage you take by 2.5%. Grizzled Veteran. When fighting a player, you deal 4% more damage and take 4% less damage. And To the Victor. When you defeat a player, your Grizzled Veteran bonus increases to 12% for 10 seconds. The effect does not stack, but will refresh if another player is defeated. So that obviously works alongside this one. So that will increase the damage you deal and reduce the damage you take. Moving on to the next part of this build. Next up, taking a look at legendary gems. So I pretty much use the same setup all the time for PvP, but I swap the occasional gem out. So we're using Blood-Soaked Jade, Starfire Shard, Roiling Consequence, which that helps with Angmits because you've also got the burn effect from that. I'm using Chipper's Stone Flesh, but I'm not actually using that gem. I've got Colossus Engine linked into that, so as an auxiliary gem. So I'm getting the effect from Colossus Engine, but keeping my resonance at 5,000. The only reason I've got that in place and that higher resonance for the PvP build is so that I can actually use that Colossus Engine. I didn't want to swap out any of my other legendary gems in this build. So I've also got Wolfure, Bottled Hope, Void Spark, and Seeping Bile. So there are alternative options that you could use to these gems if you are free to play or low resonance, mid spend. Let's take a look at the market here, and I'll talk through some of the legendary gems that I'd recommend using in place of ones that I've got. So if you are free to play or low resonance, I'd go for Berserker's Eye. So this increases all damage you deal by 5.5%. It does increase the damage you take, but this definitely helps in PvP with regards to dealing or increasing the damage dealt. It also increases your critical hit chance. Everlasting Torment is another one that's really nice. So your critical hits inflict agony, dealing 10% base damage, plus 122 every 6 seconds. So, or for every second for 6 seconds. Each enemy cannot be affected by this more than once every 20 seconds. So 20 seconds is actually quite a low cooldown on that. So that can work quite nicely in this PvP. I would definitely recommend Everlasting Torment, especially if you're using damage over time effects as well. That works really nicely. And having the critical hit from that, and then or having that work alongside the Berserker's Eye is really nice in PvP. Carson's Invigoration you could go for. This increases the attack speed of your primary attack. So if you are having to use your primary attack at any time, that can help. Although I wouldn't say that would be a priority for me personally. Black Rose is nice. Each time you're attacked, you have a 10% chance to summon vines that immobilize the attacker. So that one will help with obviously immobilizing the people on the enemy team. We obviously have the new gems. So we've got Falter Grasp. Critical hits disable enemies, preventing their use of dash skills. So being able to disable dash skills is really helpful. I'd recommend that, especially if you are free to play. Entropic Well is another one that you could use. So this increases your skill damage by 6%. Now the build overall is very much skill based and not primary attack. You very rarely have to use your primary attack. So you could use this one, as that will increase the skill damage there as well. Then moving on to 2-star gems. Power and Command is really nice. This alternates state every 9 seconds. Power increases your primary attack damage. Command increases all other skill damage. So again, that's something that will be focusing on your skill damage. Because you are using a ranged build, Bloody Reach is also really nice. This increases all the damage you deal by 2% every 2 yards between you and the enemy hit, up to a maximum of 8% at 8 yards. And your attacks have a 0.3 chance to decrease enemy movement speed by 35% at rank 3. So that one again works really nicely. Obviously this is just the gems at their lowest, so without having any upgrades on them. Battle Guard is good if you want more defense in your build. So this decreases all damage you take by 8% from enemies within 3 yards, and you move unhindered through enemies while your life is below 15%. So Battle Guard is really helpful in PvP. Not many people talk about that gem anymore or use it, but I think for Wizard especially it can work really nicely. A couple of others that I'd recommend. Pain Clasp is one of my go-to gems. This increases damage dealt by 8% to enemies suffering from a continuous damage effect. When enemies suffering from continuous damage is within 10 yards, your movement speed is increased by 1.5%. So continuous damage is burn, bleed, poison, and total loss of control as well now. So that one works really nicely with this build once again. Mother's Lament is a great gem. When you deal damage, you have 20% chance of gaining Maternal Disdain, increasing your critical hit chance by 12% for 6 seconds. Can occur more often than once every 20 seconds. So if you're using that alongside some of the 1-star gems I mentioned, you obviously have that increased critical hit chance. That works really nicely as an alternative to the critical hit chance you get from Roiling Consequence. Can also use both of them together if you are a mid-reso or higher resonance player. Mother's Lament is just a good option if you're free to play or a mid-spender. Viper's Bite, another really nice gem. Damaging enemies poisons them with Viper's Venom, causing them to take 16% base damage plus 120 damage every second for 6 seconds. Cannot occur on the same target more often than once every 20 seconds. Viper's Venom also reduces enemy attack speed by 1.5%. Now, Viper's Bite is a gem that I absolutely love. I made the mistake of making mine dormant. I'm still trying to earn enough gem power to reawaken it, but I really strongly recommend this for PvP. If anything, it's actually better than Seeping Bile, so I will be looking at, as I said, reactivating my one and using that one again very soon. Cold Confidant, another really nice 2-star gem. Dealing damage summons a pillar of ice at the enemy's location with life equal to 300% of your maximum life. Enemies near the pillar are chilled and dealt 15% base damage plus 344 each second. The pillar persists for 6 seconds or until destroyed. So I actually really like Cold Confidant. I use this on my ult and it does work nicely in PvP. Another alternative that you could use, or the last alternative I'm going to suggest, is the new 2-star gem Spectre Glass. Critical hits shatter enemy armor for 2 seconds, increasing the damage they take from you by 10%. Cannot occur on the same target more often than once every 6 seconds. Spectre Glass's armor shatter also increases your critical hit chance against the enemy by 1% at rank 3. And obviously with these gems at rank 10 you get much better results from them. So those are all alternatives that you could use to the gems that I'm using. You can also use a mixture of what I've got equipped and some of these gems. Just play around with it. Sometimes the 2-star gems and the 1-star gems give really nice results, especially in PvP. If you're low resonance in PvP or mid resonance in PvP, definitely going for these or going for some of these 2- and 1-star gems makes a real big difference and will make your build a lot more powerful. And lastly, just taking a look at my Warband buff here. So I use the Protector buff in this build. This has the damage taken reduced by 1%. That is actually stackable. So I get that twice. So that means I get damage taken reduced by 2%. Protector reduces damage taken by 15% for 6 seconds when below 15% of your total life. Can occur more than once every 60 seconds. And increases your life by 6.5% and your size by 15%. And overall increases your block chance by 5%. So I go for this because of the increased life and increased size. Having the increased size really helps in PvP, just so that you have a little bit more ground cover when you're moving. You cover a lot of distance quicker with that increased size, and obviously using that alongside the new Colossus engine does work really nicely. You do end up quite big and it makes it much faster to actually move across the screen. One last thing to touch on in this build is my charm. This unfortunately doesn't really have any of the skills on it for my PvP other than Scorch. I'm going to be looking at making some more charms soon. I'll make a video on that with the new system for actually creating charms. So that's something that we'll be looking at a later date, and I'll definitely be looking at making one that is more based around my PvP builds. So that is it from me for this video. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Let me know if you've tried this build out, or if you do try this build out. I'd like to hear your results as well. But for now, that's it, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Official Diablo partner.